Welcome to the Deep Dive. We sift through the articles, the research, your notes, and pull out the knowledge nuggets you need to be well-informed without the overwhelm. Today, we're kicking things off with a little AMJ Jeopardy. The answer is 10. So, what's the question?
Okay, 10. Let me think. Is it, how many times on average do winners of the AMJ Best Article Award rewrite their introduction?
That's exactly it. You nailed it. But here's what makes that number, well, truly striking. It's also how many times the editors of this very source we're looking at rewrote their own introduction for the piece.
Wow. Okay, so even the editors struggled with their own advice.
Apparently so. They still weren't satisfied after 10 tries. Imagine that.
That really does set the stage, doesn't it? So our deep dive today is all about the art of crafting a room. Incredibly compelling introductions. We're drawing wisdom from an editorial called Publishing in AMJ Part 3, Setting the Hook, from the Academy of Management Journal.
Absolutely. And our mission here is to unpack what makes an introduction truly effective. We'll explore how top scholars actually approach writing them, reveal some surprising best practices.
And maybe crucially, highlight the common pitfalls to avoid.
Exactly. The goal is really to give you listening a kind of shortcut to understanding how to set the hook in your own communication, making your ideas stick.
Whether that's a report, a presentation, or even just a persuasive email.
Right.
So let's unpack this. The source immediately hits on a pretty powerful truth. Articles, well, they're kind of like first dates.
Huh. Okay, I like that analogy.
Yeah, those first impressions really, really matter. The introduction, often just a few pages, it's the gatekeeper. It basically dictates whether readers, and especially those, crucial reviewers, will even bother to keep going.
And the stakes here are just incredibly high.
Yeah.
The source says if reviewers are genuinely intrigued by that opening, they actually start looking for reasons to recommend a revision.
Right. They want it to succeed.
But if the intro doesn't grab them, they're basically looking for reasons to reject it. It's the ultimate make-or-break moment, isn't it?
Totally. It really is. So what's fascinating is that an effective introduction, like at its core, it answers three crucial questions for the reader. The first one is, who cares?
Who cares? Yep.
And this isn't just stating your topic. It's about explaining why it's interesting and important, both theoretically and practically.
So we're talking about planting your study's roots firmly in what's sometimes called Pasteur's quadrant, right? That idea of contributing both to basic understanding and real-world application.
Exactly. It's about making it relevant on multiple levels. And it's about crafting ideas that truly stick, ideas that are simple, unexpected, concrete, credible.
Emotional, have a story. All those elements. The key insight here seems to be your intro isn't just stating a problem. It's making the solution feel urgent and maybe unforgettable.
Yes, precisely. And the source identified two main ways. Archetypal hooks that successful authors use to really grab readers.
Okay, what are they?
Well, one is using a provocative quotation or maybe a vivid vignette.
I like those. They can be really powerful, like the example they gave of Ferrier, Smith, and Grimm using actual media headlines. Kellogg's cutting prices.
Yeah, Amoko scrambles. Things like that. It immediately grounds the topic in a real-world kind of high-stakes scenario.
Or some authors they mentioned go even further, opening with a really captivating story that just pulls you right in.
Definitely. The other effective hook involves highlighting trends. Now, this can be Main Street trends, recent changes in the workplace or society where the causes or effects are still a bit mysterious.
Like the Ellsback and Kramer example, lamenting that despite a whole cottage industry of creativity books, we still didn't really know how experts judge creative potential. That points to a real gap.
Right, or Margolis and Walsh opening with that really startling observation, the world cries out for repair. That signals a huge, impactful problem right away.
Those are powerful. And the other type of trend?
The ivory tower trend. So looking at trends within the academic literature itself, maybe identifying limitations or contradictions.
Okay. Like the Barkema and Vermeulen example.
Yeah.
Identifying two big trends in foreign investment research, but then saying, hey, look at this less explored area. That's where we come in.
Exactly. So whether it's a real-world puzzle or a gap in the academic conversation, you're signaling immediate relevance. You're answering that who cares question.
Okay, so once you've established who cares, what's the second core question an intro needs to tackle?
The second one is, what do we know? What don't we know? And so what?
Right.
This is really about identifying the specific conversation your study is joining, showing where that conversation hasn't quite gone yet, and crucially explaining why it should go there.
This sounds like that phrase, establishing and problematizing the intertextual field, which is a bit of a mouthful.
It is a mouthful, yeah.
Can you break down what it really means to problematize the field? Because it's not just complaining about what's missing, right?
That's a great question. No, it's definitely not just complaining. When you're establishing the field, you're basically showing where your idea fits. You might be bridging two different talks or pushing one forward, or maybe even resolving a debate.
Okay, positioning it.
Exactly. You're just clearly signaling where your work sits in the bigger picture. But the real art, as you said, is in problematizing it, convincing readers that, yes, more knowledge is genuinely needed, but without being, overly dismissive of past work.
And that seems like a tricky balance. The source mentions authors can go wrong here, being too tentative.
Right, suggesting incompleteness. That makes your work sound kind of incremental, like just another small step.
Or the opposite, too aggressive.
Yeah, incommensurability, where you basically attack prior research, and that risks a backlash. Nobody likes being told their work is useless.
So what's the sweet spot?
The source suggests framing it as inadequacy. It strikes a more reasonable middle ground. It basically says, look, prior work got us partway there, but it's fundamentally missing something crucial. We need a fresh look.
Okay, that makes sense. It validates past efforts, but still carves out space for your contribution. Like the examples they gave Greenwood and Sotheby for theoretical importance, or Suey and colleagues for practical importance.
Precisely. They showed why a new perspective was needed without tearing everything down.
Got it. So you've answered who cares and what do we know not know? What's the third big question?
The third is, what will we learn? This is where you preview your work's specific theoretical contribution.
And crucially, it's not just about saying there's a gap, right? I remember reading that an outstanding reviewer noted that just stating a gap isn't enough.
Absolutely. That reviewer hit the nail on the head. You must articulate why filling that gap actually matters or how it fundamentally enhances our understanding. It's the so what of the gap.
So how do you frame that contribution effectively?
Well, the source highlights a couple of ways. One is consensus shifting. This is where you identify widely held assumptions, challenge them directly, and then spell out the implications. Think about completely changing how people view a problem.
Okay, shaking things up.
Yeah, or there's consensus creation. This is useful when the literature is maybe messy or contradictory. You show that lack of agreement and then either clarify the debate or actually resolve the conflict.
So you're either challenging the status quo or bringing order to chaos.
Essentially, yes. The goal is to boldly challenge or resolve existing ideas.
And one Best Article Award winner described the intro as a kind of standalone mini-summary of the whole paper.
Exactly. It has to position the question, outline your approach, the theory, the methods, and briefly touch on the contributions. It's like the entire abstract, but woven into a compelling narrative.
A full meal in miniature. Okay, so knowing what an effective intro looks like, that leads us to the process. How do these top scholars actually develop something so impactful?
Right. This is where it gets really interesting and maybe a bit counterintuitive.
Yeah, I was surprised by this. You'd think they'd write the intro first, wouldn't you? To kind of map everything out.
That's what I would have thought too. But surprisingly, 59%, almost 60% of the Best Article Award winners wrote their introductions somewhere in the middle of the writing process.
In the middle thought.
Yeah. They might jot down notes early on, sure, but the real honing, the crafting, happens later. Often after the results are in or the main body is drafted. Only about 9% wrote it right at the start, and another 9% waited until the very end.
That's wild. And the time commitment. That was also pretty staggering.
Oh, absolutely. On average, winners estimated spending 24%, almost a quarter of their total writing time, just on the introduction.
Wow. Even though it's maybe less than 10% of the paper's length.
Exactly. More than a third of them dedicated 30% or more time to it, with one even hitting 50%. And we're talking about an intro that's typically aiming for around, 3 double-spaced pages for AMJ?
24% on 3 pages. That's dedication. And it starts to make sense when you hear about the rewriting. That average number again, 10 times.
10 times. That was our Jeopardy answer, right? And 45% rewrote it 10 or more times. Minimum was 3, but many went way beyond 10.
And that quote from one winner, "I never count the number of revisions. It would be too depressing."
I can understand that. Me too. And a huge majority, 86%, said they rewrote the introduction more than any other single part of the paper.
So it's clearly the part that requires the most iteration, the most refinement.
Without a doubt. And this commitment leads to sort of three distinct approaches to that rewriting process based on what the winners described.
Okay, what are those?
First, there's what the source calls ruthless rewriting.
Ruthless. Sounds intense.
It does. It often involves multiple authors who have a lot of trust, but maybe not much pity for each other's prose. They just constantly try to better what the other wrote.
Like that quote. I wrote it, author 2 ignored what I wrote, then I rewrote what author 2 wrote, and back and forth.
Exactly. And on it went. It sounds almost adversarial, but it's really about collaborative refinement, pushing the core message to be as sharp as possible.
Okay, that's one way. What's the second?
The second is iterative enactment. This follows that idea of, how can I know what I think until I see what I say?
Writing as a thinking tool.
Precisely. Winners using this approach would rewrite the intro until the core question or the gap or the contribution really crystallized for them. This seemed especially common for qualitative papers where the key insights might emerge later in the analysis.
Like the person who said, we wrote it last after we figured out the gems from the study. The intro reflects the final discovery.
Exactly. The writing process itself helps them discover the story they need to tell in the introduction.
And the third approach.
The third was more straightforward, following a clearer map. These authors approached it more linearly. They'd consciously try to answer those three core questions we talked about. Who cares? What do we know? What will we learn?
So more structured from the outset.
Yeah, like the author who said, I would make a list of reasons to convince myself why anyone should care. Then they'd write and rewrite, focusing on making that argument really convincing for the reader, ensuring there was something novel.
Okay, so ruthless collaboration, iterative discovery or structured argument building, different paths, same destination, a killer intro.
Pretty much.
So putting all this together, let's talk best practices and, the common pitfalls. What did the outstanding reviewers and award winners highlight as really key?
Well, three things really stood out for best practices. Focusing the intro tightly, really engaging the reader, and effectively problematizing the literature, that inadequacy point again.
And there was that interesting side benefit too, right? The idea of self-persuasion.
Yeah, that's a great point. Writing a strong introduction isn't just for the reader. It actually helps the authors motivate themselves and stay focused. One winner literally said intros are as much about motivating me as well as the reader.
It clarifies your own thinking. That makes a lot of sense.
Totally. And the source gives some fantastic examples of intros that really hit the mark. Some were memorable for shifting or creating consensus.
Right, like Latham, Erez, and Locke resolving that big debate on goal setting, or Schmidt, Hunter, and Perlman basically destroying an old theory and setting a new direction.
Huge impact. And then there was Staw, Bell, and Clausen brilliantly setting up the consensus on job attitudes. And then, bam, showing attitudes are largely dispositional. Talk about consensus shifting.
That takes guts. So the lesson there is boldly challenge or resolve existing ideas.
Definitely. Other intros were praised for their storytelling. Barker told a story to ground you. Whiteman and Cooper captured my imagination.
Which shows that narrative can be a powerful tool for engagement, even in formal writing.
Absolutely. And then there's just good old-fashioned clarity and structure. Chatterjee and Hambrick were noted for a clean structure, clear direction, and teasing of the reader.
And Galati and Westphal called masters of introductions for their clarity. How they identified the gap, explained contributions, avoided jargon.
Right. The takeaway is clear. Make it easy for your audience to follow your argument and see its value. Don't make them work too hard up front.
And finally, some intros were highlighted as great conversation starters.
Yeah, like Lounsbury and Glynn, or Rao, Monin, and Durand. They situated the work broadly, connected with big, classic ideas, maybe left a little ambiguity that makes you want to read more, to engage with the research stream.
So the lesson is, don't just present answers, provoke new questions, and invite deeper engagement.
Exactly.
Okay, that's the good stuff. Now, for the flip side, what are the big mistakes reviewers see? The common pitfalls.
The most common one, cited in 60% of cases, was failing to motivate and problematize.
So basically failing that who cares and what do we know not know so what.
Test. Pretty much. Authors assume the motivation is obvious, maybe, or they don't clearly identify a meaningful research gap. Reviewers complain about intros focusing only about filling a gap, not addressing the so what question.
Right. Or using those bad frames like, this has never been done before, which can sound naive or arrogant or claiming first-mover advantage.
And the crucial advice that came back was, not all gaps need to be filled. Some reviewers even suggested avoiding the word gap altogether.
Interesting. Focus instead
On addressing compelling questions, significant problems, interesting puzzles, persistent paradoxes, things that spark genuine intellectual curiosity. It's about impact, not just box checking.
Focus on intellectual curiosity and impact, not just checking off a box. Got it. What's the second pitfall?
Second most common, at 45%, was lack of focus.
The rambling intro.
Exactly. Introductions that are too long, wander off topic, or cram in too much extraneous detail, maybe too much literature review that belongs later.
Or using too many different frameworks, perhaps. Or just describing the paper sections instead of really defining the problem and the contribution up front.
Right. Authors fail to clearly state their goals or how the study importantly adds to what we already know.
So the advice is, keep it concise, stay on point, and always connect back to your core contribution.
You got it. And the third pitfall, less common at 14%, but still significant, is overpromising.
Ooh, setting expectations too high.
Yeah, creating a mismatch between the introduction and the rest of the paper. Trying so hard to sell the importance of the study that the claims become, as one reviewer put it, implausible and ridiculously self-serving.
Right. So don't oversell. Let your actual findings and analysis deliver on the promise of your introduction.
Exactly. Be confident, but be realistic.
Okay, so wrapping this up, what's the big picture here? It really comes down to that first impression, doesn't it?
It really does. You only get one chance, and in academic work, or really any persuasive communication, the introduction is that chance.
A good one hooks the reader, makes the topic's importance clear, explains what we know and don't know, and why it matters.
And clearly shows how your work changes, challenges, or advances the conversation.
And it takes work. A lot of work, apparently.
A significant amount of time and effort. That average of 10 rewrites, the editors doing it 10 times themselves, it highlights just how valuable that focused effort is.
It reminds me of that Mark Twain quote. I would have written a shorter letter, but I didn't have the time.
Huh. That's perfect. Writing a concise, compelling introduction really demands making that time. But as the success of these award-winning articles shows, the effort is absolutely rewarded.
It truly seems like a craft. So for you, listening right now, here's something to think about. How can these powerful principles for setting the hook apply beyond just academic papers?
Yeah, think about your next presentation, maybe that project proposal you're putting together.
Or even just a compelling story you want to share with a friend or colleague. How will you use these insights capturing attention, clarifying importance, showing what's new to leave a lasting impression? What will be your next hook?